Heavy spoilers for Hellblade 2 ahead. Play the game first, it's pretty short in any case, and then come back for quiet moments of reflection with me. From here on, I will assume you have either played the game already, or you're simply not bothered by spoilers. So without further ado, let us begin. I don't like Thorgestr death in Hellblade 2, even if I like Hellblade 2 very much. I reviewed this game some time ago and I lauded it for being consistent to the original game, for respecting the character of Senua and not subverting her like so many other characters in recent memory, and for respecting the player's time without the need of overloading the experience with needless content. I recognize that the game is not perfect, but it is a great sequel that had its priorities in check and didn't bend them to satisfy haters and modern trends, a mistake that so many other sequels do. That being said, I don't like the fact that Thorgestr dies in Hellblade mainly for 3 reasons. The first one is because the character, in my opinion, is severely underdeveloped. This is one of the very few aspects that is actually harmed by the game's short length. Thorgestr has an amazing opening sequence. He is the very first character that we see in the game. He has this banger of a boss fight that is challenging, terrifying and exhilarating all at once, and without a doubt, the best boss fight of the entire game, and the overall highlight of Hellblade 2. This is one of the top 3 sequences that people will remember whenever they look back at this game. Not only is the sequence great by itself, but it becomes even better at the ending when Senua is going to kill him but stops when she notices the rot across his left arm, a rot very similar to the one she had in Hellblade 1. This immediately makes Thorgestr stand out. He is another one like her, and the first character that demonstrates to Senua that these northerners that she calls enemies are as afflicted by their past, their religion, and society as she used to be in her homeland. This is the first step towards her change of heart, and why Senua eventually decides to help these people instead of fighting them. Then we have the inevitable byplays between the two, in which Senua interrogates him and pushes him around a little, giving the slave master a little of his own medicine. It is important to note that she could have left him there to die. He had, after all, given her the information she needed, and thus had outlived his usefulness. Letting him live could also prove fatal, because he is an enemy and one that has sworn to kill her given the chance. But eventually, Senua returns and unties him, because she cannot leave him there to die in good conscience. It is also important to point out that this compassion is rarely seen in female characters these days. This is also her first true act of mercy, and an important moment in Thorgestr's evolution as a character. This act of mercy is one that he returns shortly after when he defends her from the giant, and afterwards he remains loyal to her throughout the rest of the game. So far the character has been interesting, and their interaction compelling. The problem is that not much else will happen afterwards with him and between them until the very end of the game. For the longest part now, Senua will be exploring caves in search of hidden folk, then battling a fire giant, then walking around beaches matching bubbles, then fighting another giant, and it is then when she and Thorgestr finally have another sequence together, albeit brief, before having their only meaningful conversation throughout the whole game, only to have her explore a haunted forest now, in which surprisingly you don't match anything with anything, and then they have this other brief sequence before the ending, in which everything goes south quickly and he is stabbed in the back by his own father. The rest of Thorgestr is within Senua's mind, so it doesn't count. Thorgestr's character arc ended with a stab in the back, and the only importance the character had was giving Senua a name whose value is more symbolical than useful, because she is exactly breaking those symbolisms by defeating the very human tyrant that created the giants in the first place in open combat before his own serfs and soldiers. Simply said, the character appeared too little to be fully developed, So by the time he dies, I felt I was barely starting to like the character, and I immediately felt his potential thrown off the window. His death, mainly by Aleifir's hands, also feels forced and out of place, because Aleifir is, after all, his own father. The two men had an argument and 10 minutes they are killing each other? That's ridiculous. We barely know this villain, and we're supposed to believe that this guy is worse than Zynbel? Because that is exactly what these two men are, an allegory of Senua and Zynbel. The thing is that Zynbel never killed Senua. He killed Galina, he killed Dilion, but he never killed his daughter. That was the one line he never crossed. This is not to say that Zynbel's actions are condoned in any way, because they aren't. The reality is that this man abused his daughter and was constantly manipulating her, exacerbating her mental illness in order to maintain control of her. But he never killed her. Hellblade 1 was a very interesting game because it balanced, within Senua's conscious and subconscious mind, the difference between real-life Zynbel and Zynbel as the face of her darkness. After having witnessed her father killing her mother, and then spending her childhood as his prisoner, while being abused both physically and mentally, it is inevitable that Senua uses her father's face and voice as the embodiment of the darkness. Every time Senua witnesses cruelty, she remembers her father. It is inevitable. That's what we normally call trauma. However, in Hellblade 1 we also have some memories of Galina talking to Senua about Zynbel, and in those memories we get glimpses of the real person that Zynbel was, and not the monster of a traumatized person's exaggerated memories.
Oh, Senua. Your father does not hate me. He just fears the souls in the underworld. He cannot see that they are already afraid. But I am their healer, and I must answer their cries for help, even if it displeases him. If only we could see life through each other's eyes, there would be no hatred. Though we only hate what we fear, we only fear what we cannot see. Your father, and I will keep on trying, but his gods will not let him avert his gaze. But if he could, he would know not to turn his anger on us.
Even if these are hidden memories in Senua's subconscious, and thus they make little difference in the main story of the game and Senua's immediate trauma, which is the death of Dilion, they certainly add a lot of texture to the backstory of the characters involved. We as the player understand that these characters are more complex than just victims or victimizers, and although none of these condones the brutal actions of Zynbel, we indirectly learn that he was not the pure evil nemesis his daughter remembers him as most of the time. But in Hellblade 2, the villain has no such depth whatsoever, and this is a living person that we actually meet in the present of the game. A few moments later, the game tells us that he was once a great leader that was beloved by his people, but power corrupted him. The thing is that we never see any of those attributes in the character that we meet. No semblance of the man he was. All we see is an asshole that doesn't keep appearances, an asshole that insults Senua the moment he sees her, an asshole that slaps his son around and calls him a simpleton in front of everyone else, and a second later is already turning hostile. In 5 minutes he is threatening his son with his own life, and in 10 minutes he is killing him because he is evil and all of his focus has shifted to spite a complete stranger. So we've known this guy for around 10 minutes and already he has done the worst thing Zynbel never did: kill his own offspring, his own flesh and blood, without any valid reason or build-up. This naturally makes the villain the worst aspect of the game. The guy throws insults and aggressions both left and right in rapid fire in order to justify why we must defeat him 15 minutes later. All of this makes the ending as a whole feel rushed and certainly the less polished part of the whole experience. Not only did this guy tarnish the ending itself, but he also trampled Thorgester's potential. This leads me neatly to the third and final reason to why I do not like Thorgester's death, and that one is that both he and his father had great potential going forward into a third game. Before I elaborate, it is necessary for me to explain why Senua herself is such a great character in this game, despite the missteps in the writing of the other characters, and therefore how could Thorgester and Aleifir fit into her own story going forward. Senua is such an interesting character in Hellblade 2 because she truly develops throughout the whole game. In the first, she was the victim that is saved by Dillion and guided by Druth. In the second, the writers respected the character enough as to give her the agency to become a guide herself, a role that we rarely see women fill in other stories. She is no longer the helpless victim of the original game that is desperately trying to bring her lover back because she yearns for his company and protection. In this second game, she remembers and honors Dillion's memory, yes, and very dearly, but she is no longer dependent of it. Now she can carry on, and instead of seeking guidance from others, she is able to pass it on to others. Senua now is the experienced sufferer, pretty much like Druth was to her in the original game. So in this sequel, she is basically playing the role of Druth and excelling because she interacts with different characters throughout her journey, and each one of them is different in attitudes, strengths, and weaknesses, and she manages to befriend and guide all of them. The thing is that even if Argrimir and Astrid are superstitious people that believe in giants and fear haunted forests, the character that greatly resembles the Senua of the first game is Thorgester, more than the other two. Like I already said, Thorgester is allegorical to Senua in the first game, and Aleifir is pretty much Thorgester's Zynbel, and the game doesn't hold back in quickly giving Aleifir Zynbel's voice and dialogues, so the parallel is obvious on purpose. So if Thorgester is the new Senua, and Aleifir the new Zynbel, that naturally makes Senua the new Dillion, and that is where the writing in the game mainly fails. Because Senua more than excelled in filling Druth's shoes by being able to guide superstitious people and use their own legends to break the illusions created by their tyrannical leaders, pretty much what Druth did to Senua in the first game with his Tales of the Northmen. However, it is simply impossible to Senua to be a new Dillion for Thorgester's sake because they have so very little time together. The game mainly focuses on Senua becoming Druth, and the Dillion aspect of the story is mostly a sideline. And by the time it becomes relevant, we are already at the ending, with very little development prior to this moment. The fact that Thorgester is killed and Aleifir quickly defeated by the end of the second game makes it impossible to carry on this interesting story to a third game. But it is necessary to tell this story. Senua must become Dillion. She must pass on all of that goodwill and patience to someone else, for otherwise her story is incomplete. It is only fitting that Hellblade 3 is a love story because Hellblade 1 was a love story as well. Thorgester was the perfect character to tell this story, because he had a similar upbringing to hers, and his character had been established since the beginning of the second game. But with the character dead, it will be difficult to bring Senua's story full circle. In my opinion, Hellblade 3 should focus on Senua becoming Dillion, now a fully fleshed leader of a divided clan, with a defeated but still influential Aleifir spreading the seeds of doubt within the people, and Thorgester divided by loyalty to his flesh and blood, and loyalty to the woman that truly understands him and appreciates him for whom he really is. And there is still a way this could be fixed. I'm going down a crazy spiral here, so humor me a little. Thorgester could have survived this backstab. After all, the blade is a little to the right, so maybe it avoided his heart. This would leave the man wounded and perhaps even paralyzed, but he would live, and a warrior with a broken body and spirit could be the foundations of an interesting scenario in a Hellblade story eventually. Senua trying to help him come to terms with his situation while learning at the same time that broken bodies is a completely different beast to mental illness and that she is not always as unlucky as she might feel at times, because her body is still healthy. That could work in a third game, and it would validate Senua's character even more because she is dealing with something that she hasn't dealt with before, and something that not even Dillion had to deal with because Senua's problems were mental and not physical. Bringing characters back from the dead is something that is usually regarded as cheap, but it doesn't have to be if done right, and if the character serves a purpose afterwards. And I'm telling you, there is more story to tell with Thorgestr, his father, and Senua, so the resuscitation would have meaning. All they have to do is write it well, and considering the job Ninja Theory has done with the first two Hellblades, I have complete confidence that they could do it a third time. The beauty of the character of Dillion in Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice was that he saved Senua in more ways than one. Why then couldn't Senua save Thorgestr in more ways than one? Senua must. She deserves the opportunity to bring her story full circle, and that is why we need a third and final game, and that is why Thorgestr shouldn't die. Otherwise, his character becomes a study in wasted potential, and that would be kind of unfortunate.